Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Dan McCarthy,
And I'm Brian Basaga.
and we'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Functional Fighters Podcast.
This is our podcast where we discuss martial arts as it relates to self defense, focusing on practical applications, theory, history, applicability in the modern world, and just generally trying to make everyone a better martial artist.
Tonight, we thought we would have a little bit of fun and we would discuss martial arts stereotypes. And the fun thing about this is when you instruct martial arts, you got to deal with this stuff all the time because people have a specific notion of martial arts from the media, from movies, from TV shows, and things like that. So a lot of what we deal with when somebody walks in is trying to clear up those stereotypes. So it could be a lot of fun to kind of discuss what some of those are that we kind of got to break the barriers down and educate about. So I think we've got probably quite a few to look at. Um, and some of those are like archetypes. Like you could go, uh, this character from this TV series or this movie or whatever. Um, and then there's probably archetypes of what people just assume we do on a regular basis that are not necessarily like a specific character, but they think we do this or there's those great memes out there of, you know, what people think I do, what I think I do, what I actually do, that kind of stuff.
Yes, right.
Um, so what do you think? Where do you want to start, Bri?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about stereotypes in the martial arts, or when I think about when do I typically encounter stereotypes related to martial arts, it's the most common for me has always been, when you're talking to someone or you meet someone new or whatever, and you're getting to know each other, and you mention, you know, hey Brian, what do you like to do? Oh well, I really like to practice martial arts. I like to teach martial arts. Oh well, you must be like insert some type of martial arts stereotype here, right?
Right.
So,
Oh, so you mean you could kick my butt? There's a good
that's a
one.
common one.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Or, most recently I was talking to a guy at work, and we were driving into the plant, just making idle chatter, waiting to get to where we were going. And, he's like, oh, yeah, so you're into martial arts. I used to work with another guy who was into the martial arts, and he was always doing this thing where he would poke you really hard from only like 1 inch away. I'm sure you can do that, right? It's like some some single piece of
Yeah.
martial arts knowledge goes there. And he had all kinds of things to say about this guy. Like he was always talking about his internal energy and doing all this. And it's like, hey, I didn't peg you for the monk type. And it's like, well,
That's
dude, because I
hilarious.
am not a monk type. Like,
Yeah.
just because I study martial arts does not mean that that is what I am.
Yeah. Well, along that same lines, and I don't want to be hurtful, hurt anybody's feelings, so I'm not going to say any names, but um, there are people out there that are there's multiple facets to every person on the planet. Everybody has varying facets to their personality. Some of us have more than others is what I'm really getting at.
Mhm.
And we've known some people, one in particular I'm thinking of, who their level of facets was really fairly limited. Work, martial arts, that's about it. And that's fine. I'm not trying to
Mhm.
judge anybody in any way, shape, or form. It's not my business to tell anybody how to live their life. But for some of us, um, there's nothing beyond it. For some of us, it's a hobby, right? I mean, let's
Oh,
be
yeah.
let's be honest about that. For me, martial arts isn't a hobby. It's a way of life. Um, but it also isn't the only thing that I think about into obsession. I have a wife. I've got kids. I have other passions like fitness. Um, and crafting. I had to make sure my 3D printer wasn't running while we were recording because we don't want to hear the 3D printer running back and forth. But I got things I do, man,
Yeah,
besides just
right.
punch and kick. So Yeah,
I
some of
mean,
us are more multifaceted than others.
right, exactly. There's live, eat, breathe. And that martial arts can be a way of life without
Hmm.
you having to do only martial arts, right? Now,
Right.
obviously, if your goal in life is to be a MMA fighter or a tournament fighter or something, it needs to be the only thing you do, right? Because that's how you're going to get to that level. But the rest of us, like you said, we have other things that we do as well. But I always think it's funny too. Like you can, as just a observer of life, you can learn something about the people by which martial arts stereotype they choose to project onto you,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So, and this again, you can't like, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist or anything. It's just, my own thoughts on the subject. But like, where's the first place their mind goes when they go to martial arts? It may say something about their experience with the martial arts or their view on the martial arts, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Very much so.
yeah,
Man, if I never get called Daniel-san another day in my life,
yeah, you got that going for
how
you.
yeah, how well does that work? I'm actually a martial arts student. My name's Daniel, and yeah, man, I get that when people don't know I do martial arts. When people have no clue that, I get that all the time. I have one student who actually says it very much as a term of endearment, and he means it respectfully and he means
Mhm.
it lovingly. And he's about the only person I'll take it from because I know where it comes from in his heart.
Right.
And so it doesn't bother me when he does it. But I get that from so many people. I mean, I've got it basically my entire life since about high school on. It's been that there, whether people know I do martial arts or not. So that's a great stereotype to start with. Let's start with the Mr. Miyagi. How about that?
There you go. Everybody's favorite martial arts stereotype,
Yeah, that's
at
my
least
favorite.
from a certain, yes, from a certain, in a certain demographic. That is certainly a popular one.
Yeah, that's my favorite. I love Mr. Miyagi, and it's not uncommon to hear people when they find out that you do martial arts, suddenly the broken Japanese accent comes out and Daniel-san, and oops, I just hit my cord there. Uh,
Earthquake.
something, yeah. This is my chi. That's what it was. No, you get that, and people will start, wax on, wax off, and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And um, are there teachers like Mr. Miyagi out in the world? Is there something to the stereotype? Um, yeah,
Yeah, probably. I mean,
yeah,
what was Mr. Miyagi really? I mean, Mr. Miyagi he was the warrior in a garden, right?
right,
You know, um, and that is something that it's funny that the Karate Kid movie, when you like, has meant so many different things to me over the years. Like when I was a
yeah,
kid, I remember thinking like, all right, this is entertaining. And then you get a little bit older and you're like, this is like the worst martial arts movie in the world, right? I mean, you got like, from my era, it's like I'm starting to see like, Jean-Claude Van Damme doing these
yeah,
crazy
yeah,
acrobatic maneuvers and, follow that up with Jackie Chan and all his hijinks and stuff. And then you're looking at Karate Kid going like, what is this? This was just the worst martial arts movie ever made,
yeah,
And then you get into the martial arts and you get older, and the further you get in, or at least the further I've gotten into the martial arts, the more Karate Kid has made sense to me and the more it means to me.
Well, and there's a really good reason for that. There's a very good reason for that as a martial arts instructor, and it's because the guy who was the principal behind the movie actually was one of us. He was a black belt in Goju Ryu Karate and an instructor, and he's even in the film. He's the center referee in the tournament.
Mm,
So there's a reason why Miyagi has so much to him that rings true to those of us that are actually martial arts instructors. It's because the guy who was writing that part, he knew that. Well, and it's probably the same thing flip the coin and let's talk John Kreese, right? You got you right there.
Yeah.
You've got two real good stereotypes in martial arts instructors, and everybody looks at Miyagi, and you assume if you don't know anything about the martial arts that there's probably are karate teachers like Miyagi. You know, you can make that assumption, and it's a true statement. There are. Let's skip past the Asian stereotype for a second, and let's just accept Miyagi at this level, which is Miyagi is somebody who has a job. He has a regular Joe job. He's just a normal guy who happens to have trained in karate his entire life, right?
Right. Yeah. That's
That's
like
kind
me.
of yeah, right? There's tons of us that are like that who just I'm somebody who's a working stiff. I've got a regular job, unassuming, not of high profile, and on the side I happen to teach karate, and some of us do it on a real low level, one-on-one, just like Miyagi. That's a very real thing. Some of us have 3-4 students, a half dozen students. Some of us run a school in our spare time like I do. And that's very much. Then you flip the coin over to like a John Kreese, and a John Kreese is he's the commercial karate instructor is what he is. But he's more than just the commercial karate instructor, because he's a commercial karate instructor who comes out of the era of American martial artists who learned the martial arts from Asians while they were in the service. That is also a real thing. That is a very real thing.
Sure. I think he covers a couple of stereotypes. He's also a sociopath who's very well trained in hand-to-hand combat, right?
Right. Right.
And if you wanted to psychoanalyze him, you'd say there's definitely he is using the ability he gained in the martial arts to dominate people as a way to compensate for something that is missing in his psyche, right?
Which
Some vulnerability that he sees.
without spoiling anything, the most recent season of Cobra Kai, that gets covered. And I really appreciate that. That's one of the best parts about that show, is that they're taking all those stereotypes and they're fleshing them into three-dimensional human beings. So even Kreese as a character is becoming, although he's completely abhorrent as a character, and you get to see a young 18-year-old, 19-year-old John Kreese before
You get
he
to
was a
understand how he
complete
got to
scumbag.
be who he is, right?
Yeah, and that's cool.
And I think in our episode about one of our previous episodes, I can't remember which one, we talked about like, why do people join? Like, how do you know if you're teaching the bully, right? If he's your student, the bully, and that's, again, I guess we don't want to spoil too much for people who might be listening, but you get to you can create a John Kreese if you don't see it coming, and beyond that, you can understand like the one scenario where there is a scenario where they didn't care what they were creating, or maybe I wouldn't have known, but certainly they didn't care what they were creating, and that's kind of his scenario. But I mean, so John Kreese, you're the guy, the no mercy guy, right? I mean, there are definitely those guys out there, and you can walk into commercial schools and find it, guys who just yell and physically, I don't want to say abuse, but teach in a very physical manner. Even just the way they talk, the no mercy type stuff. It's out there. That's real. That there are people who think and act that way, and teach their students to think and act that way. And you have to decide if that's what you want to be a part of or not.
Yeah, absolutely. The fun thing about looking at some of these is also the embodiment of each one of them can happen at different times too, because maybe as a young instructor or even a young student, maybe you're more of that hardcore John Kreese and you morph into a Mr. Miyagi as you age. That's a very real possibility as well as you grow in maturity physically, mentally.
Absolutely. You would hope, you evolve some over your lifetime, and the things you experience and go through can certainly shift you around. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Well, what's another stereotype you want to talk about?
I think we can step away from the people. There's a
Archetype.
couple other people that we could come back and talk about, I think.
Yeah.
But the other one I think is interesting is when you get into, people who they either think you're, like you said at the beginning, so you get in a lot of fights, or so you could beat me up, right? That's the first thing they think about is the physical, the fighting aspect of martial arts. But there is another group of people who think about it on the opposite end, right? Who say, oh, so you probably have some supernatural powers or something like that, right?
Death touch.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, for people who are listening, the greatest take on the death touch is in a movie called Men Who Talk to Goats, I think is the title of that movie. If you have not seen it, it's not a great movie, but if you're a martial artist and you watch it just for the explanation of the death touch, it's worth it. So
I got something to go watch now.
Yes, we'll set that aside for now. But I think that's the other thing, and there were and are, you see all these different movies. Oh, sorry, it's Men Who Stare at Goats. Our producer is correcting me here. All-star cast in that movie too. It's like George Clooney and Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ewan
McGregor,
and Kevin Spacey. So,
ooh,
yeah,
you can't even say that name anymore.
Well, I don't know. You can't say everybody's a criminal or some kind of irrelevant person now.
Yeah, right.
Not meaning to comment on that either way, but
right.
Yeah, you get into the philosophical aspects of the martial arts, which you saw in. Remember, there was the old series Kung Fu, and then there was a briefly survived series like Kung Fu: The Legend Continues. And even stuff like the way Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon was told, or portrayed on the screen. So a lot of people, I think, latch onto that too, and like, oh, can you do this stuff? Can you, crush the quarter with your mind, or do whatever, levitate, go days without, food.
Right. Every last one of us has supernatural abilities, right?
Exactly.
Right. Just like Jedi. God,
I wish. Yeah.
I wish.
No kidding. No kidding.
I wish. Yeah. And I think the scary part is about that stereotype. The scary part of that one is that one's dangerous enough to fool some people. There are people who will buy into that to a high degree. Now, I've seen some really bizarre things over the years in the martial arts. I've experienced some really bizarre things. I can't say I can explain all of them. I can tell you that some of it comes down to extremely tough physical conditioning, and some of it comes down to even tougher mental conditioning. And I'm a firm believer in how psychology has an effect on physiology. I'm a huge believer in the fact that if you can train your mind really hard, your mind can trick your body. I believe that very much so. I think there's a lot of high performance athletes who have mastered that skill. The ability to have their body do the whole mind over matter thing. If you don't mind, it don't matter. Okay, and you learn how to take incredible punishment. And that's sheer force of will, is what that is. That's got to do with that. But there are a lot of people who can get taken. There are a lot of people who can get taken into that kind of thing, and that's maybe, I don't know if it's a stereotype that is very obvious, but it is one within martial arts circles. If you're not initiated to martial arts on the inside of it, like we are, cult of personality is a real thing in martial arts.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I can give you a good example. When I have new students who come through, I always try that first class they're there to get them doing some real stuff, but then explain like some of the things about how our philosophy is, how our system works, right? And one of the things that we have is called the Keto Handshake, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about. Some other
Yep.
people who are listening will know what I'm talking about. I could present that as saying, okay, I'm going to focus my energy, and I want you to squeeze my hand as hard as you can, right? Use both hands. Take your partner, everybody squeeze my hand. You won't be able to cause me any physical pain,
Right.
right?
I'm going to use my chi.
And I could do that, and those people would believe that there was something going on within me, right? That
Right.
was, some supernatural-ish power or some, heretofore understood capability of the human body that I have unlocked through thousands of
Years
hours
of,
of martial
yep.
arts practice, right?
And meditation. Don't forget the meditation.
And of course, got to throw that in there because nobody knows what that even means.
Yep.
But they're impressed by it,
Yep.
and I could sell that to people, right?
Yeah. Totally.
Another way I could do it is to explain what I have learned about biomechanics and how to do the same thing, right?
Yeah. Anatomy and physiology,
Yeah,
science.
exactly.
God
So,
forbid.
yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. That's the thing about it, right? Is across history and across more than just the martial arts, things you don't understand appear magical.
Yeah.
Right. Until you can explain them,
Yep.
then they're less magical. And then when you can explain it well enough to predict and manipulate it, it's called science.
Yes.
Right.
And it's
all the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. There is nothing in this universe there's nothing in this universe is inexplicable. There are only things we have not figured out the explanation to. Everything has an explanation. Everything has reason behind it. Everything has a formula behind it. Some of it we haven't figured out yet. We haven't reached a high enough degree of science to be able to actually explain it. But that doesn't mean that the answer isn't out there. It only means we have yet to dive deep enough to get there. 100 years ago, microbiology was not something that we could discuss. Quantum physics is not something we could discuss. And now those are commonplace things, and they're things that people can kind of roll their eyes at, and well, yeah, of course, well, yeah, you can say that, but in the 18th century, they couldn't. They would have burned you at the stake for talking about stuff like that.
Exactly.
So yeah, cult of personality is really something to look out for in the martial arts. Be careful of that teacher who has kind of that mentality of, well, these are like my core, I mean, even I've got like what I would call a core group of students. Those students that have been with me for a long time. That's what they are. Those students have been with me for a long period of time. You know what I mean? And they've spent a lot of time learning from me, but they weren't given opportunities nobody else was given. It wasn't, oh, well, pay me extra money to learn these things. Or it wasn't, you need to go out in the forest for 30 days and show me your dedication to learn my secrets, or nothing like that. It just happens to be the matter of fact that these are the students who stuck around time with me. And the longer and longer we spent time with each other, the more and more opportunities that they got. It's that simple. Everybody has that opportunity if they want it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is philosophy in the martial arts, and there is more than one way to understand things too,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm a scientist by education and practice, right? That's my day job, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I like to understand what's going on in the martial arts. Now, as I've developed my understanding of that, it has become obvious to me what they're saying when they talk about martial arts in a philosophical manner,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's just I don't know how to describe it other than to say, like, we're looking at the same reflection in the mirror, right? But we're just looking at opposite sides of the mirror, right? We're we're describing everything the same. It's the same, right? It's just the way we are understanding it is different. And that's fine, right? And in fact, I would say I'd try and explain it both ways in class, because I have some people over time who understand it better one way than the other.
Yeah.
And I, especially being such a nerd as I am, I can really go into the science and lose people. So I try and make myself step back from that. But
yeah, but Brian, by the same token, you're also such a nerd that you can go Jedi philosopher too. So
I guess so.
That works every bit as well.
Yeah. So I think what you're warning against is people who lord this information over you.
Yeah. There's no secrets, you guys. There really aren't. There are no secrets. Everything that we do has got some answer to it, and the biggest answer, honestly, is training. It really is. It'd take time to train so that you get to understand it, but there's no secrets.
So there you go, because that's another stereotype that's out there. Oh, yeah. How long do I have to train to learn the good stuff?
Yeah.
And some schools will have an answer for you on that. Right?
Yeah.
Only
5 years.
Yes. Once you spend 5 years here, we'll start to teach you you'll be ready, finally ready.
Yeah.
For the real stuff.
Right.
Right. And, there is some history behind that too. I mean, like the system that I, started training in, an Aikido Jiu-Jitsu system, there was stuff they just wouldn't teach you if you were not a black belt.
Yeah.
Right. And not even like they would not even teach it to a black belt if you were in the dojo.
Yeah.
Because it was secret.
Yeah.
Right. And the history for that, as it was explained to me anyway, is that, at that time, like when these systems were developed and, these warring feudal empires were constantly going on, like they needed to have like stuff
competitive advantage
no one else could see until it was on the battlefield and they didn't have time to figure it out. Right. And once you had trained for 7 years and you were finally a black belt and, they were pretty sure you weren't a plant or someone coming in to, steal your secret, literally steal your secrets and take them back to the other guy, they would finally teach you.
Yeah. Right? Proven loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Proven loyalty.
Yep. Not sure that's really necessary in modern America, but some people,
sure it is,
do hold on to it for
sure it is. It's but for a different reason, economics. It's economic competitive advantage as opposed to battlefield. It's I don't want you to go and open up a school across the street from me. That's what it is now. Or at least that's the way that somebody would present it to you. There's plenty of martial arts instructors in the real world today who don't go to competition, and it's not because they don't have a competitive spirit or they don't believe in competition. It's they're afraid of being out in front of other martial artists and being seen for what they are. And they don't want their students to be seen for that either, because they're afraid their students will see somebody else and go, oh, this is what it's supposed to be like. Oh, ooh, what have I been learning? Or they don't want to teach. They don't want to teach somebody to be an instructor so much because maybe that instructor will steal their students and leave without them. And that's a very real danger in a competitive market in America. It's absolutely a true danger that I could teach somebody and really groom them and spend a lot of time on them and them leave and take half my students with them. That's a real danger. I mean, from the perspective of who am I? I'm the instructor who waited patiently and tried to plan with my instructor a future for me. And I tried really hard from, obviously I'm sharing my side of the story. So try to keep that in mind, audience. I tried to develop something, and I feel like I just got stopped at every turn. So finally, I got tired of it and I left. And what happened? I wouldn't say half the students came with me, but half of my students that I have now are from that school. That's not half of the students that were at that school, but 50% of my population is made up of students that were students of mine at that school. So that's a very real danger. So yeah, that thing still kind of exists. The whole, well, we can't teach you the real secrets or whatever. Just keep in mind, there's no secrets. There aren't any.
Not right. There aren't any.
There's no magic.
There's no magic. That's a better way.
There's no magic tricks. I'd say there's no secrets, but I would say that there's pro tips. There's ways to get to somewhere faster. There's ways to get it better, and there's quick explanations that make things, but they're not hidden.
Right. I think there is some stuff. Learning the way the human brain and body learns things is really interesting when you stop and think about it for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Because one of the other things I like to do is woodworking, right? We were talking about it in the pre-show. I'm working on a bookcase right now, right? One of the things that's common to do in woodworking is cut a dovetail. I think everybody know what a dovetail is. It's like a wooden joint that can basically stick itself together, and then you really can't pull it apart, right?
See, I have no idea, so I'm glad you actually gave an explanation.
Okay.
I don't know squat about woodworking.
We could Google it, folks. What a dovetail looks like, and you'll see. But anyway, you're cutting like a shape on one board that looks like the fanned out tail of a bird, right? The dovetail part, and then on the next board, you're cutting the negative of that so that they join together, and then you can't pull them apart sideways, right?
Okay.
You can go to a class and the guy can show you, okay, this is how you're going to lay it out, and this is how you're going to hold your saw, and this is how you're going to do it, right? And I mean, it's just like you're sawing straight lines. I mean, they're on an angle, but you're sawing straight lines in wood. It's not, it's not rocket science, right?
Yeah, right.
But it does not matter how good the guy is who shows you or how many times someone shows you. The first one you cut is going to suck.
Yeah.
And so is the second one.
Yeah.
Right. And so is the 10th one.
Yeah.
And it's just all these little things that your brain has to put together on its own over time.
Yeah.
Right. That makes you get better. And martial arts is the same way.
And that's every skill. That's every skill.
Yeah, absolutely. Basketball, football, you name it, right? They can show you, but it's like you have to internalize it somehow on your own, right? Yeah. And because like I do, I have a student who's a second degree black belt who will occasionally just say, I will be doing a technique or something, and and he'll just give me that look. And I know I've learned to recognize the look right now. And that look says, why is my outside lead not as good as yours, master? Because when I do it, I just do it, right? And I'm at the point where I hardly even thinking about it when I do it anymore. And I have shown him the way that I do it every time I've shown him the way to do it.
Right.
But he's still just not there
Little
yet,
things.
right? And not that his are bad. His are second degree black belt quality. It's, outside leads. They're fine. They're great.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where as the more he does, the better his will get. And the more I do, the better mine will get. And even though I've shown like everything that I do down to, exactly the way I hold my fingers and the angle I hold my wrists and elbows at and everything, like it's just maybe a robot could learn it exactly, but a human being can't learn it that way. It has to repeat it and learn on its own.
I think even if you were to look at, it's my guess in terms of heuristic processing and modern robotics. I think what I've seen, because like you, I'm a colossal nerd. I think I've seen even in robotics, the robot has to learn how to do something, through trial and error, very much like we do. At least if it has some level of actual artificial intelligence, as opposed to being directly programmed by an operator to do it. Because if you tell a machine to do something exactly according to a program, then the machine will do exactly what you do according. By the way, I used to do computer programming.
Yes.
So the computer will do exactly what you tell it to do, even if it's not what you mean.
Yes.
And it's because there is a difference between what you say and what you mean. And a computer only understands what you say; it doesn't understand what you mean.
Exactly. Right.
But my understanding of artificial intelligence is that that's not 100% the case. I mean that is the case in a lot of it, but it's not 100% the case. So that means that artificial intelligence has to go through an actual trial and error process of learning as well. So
Yeah, which we could really dive into this rabbit hole, but is that because that's the only way that humans know how to learn, and therefore it's the only way they know how to program the artificial intelligence to learn, right?
Well, now should we go on to a matrix stereotype?
As long as it's getting us back towards the topic and away from artificial intelligence.
Nerding. There's I mean, I think the Matrix is a great example of a piece of pop culture that has come up in. I really wanted to just say recent years, and yet
1999.
Matrix is 21 years old.
That's right.
Can you believe that?
Right now.
Yeah, can you believe that? It's insane to think about. And yeah, they're getting ready to do another sequel. They're doing a fourth Matrix movie. But yeah, they are. Seriously.
Okay.
I don't know where they're
judgment. Yeah.
I don't know where they're going with it, but regardless, when you look at something like the Matrix, there's a very Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon stylized way of fighting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that you get from people who aren't on the inside of martial arts is, if you do martial arts, all martial arts do the same thing. All of us move the same way. All of us do things exactly the same way. And we all move like we're in the Matrix. We all do that kind of movement and stuff like that.
Interesting. I have another stereotype we'll get to next.
So, and the martial arts are every bit as varied as personalities across the human population. So there's very few people that can actually move at that level of coordination. And in real fighting, people tend not to look anything like that, because that's called choreography.
Yes, exactly. Half the time they're hanging from wires. Right.
Yeah.
So if physics did not apply, I would certainly fight that way because it looks fun. But physics does apply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't all move like that. And not just because we can't, but because we're not all taught that way. That's a very, very stylized way of doing martial arts. For the most part, the stuff that you see in the Matrix, by the way, is Chinese wushu, is what it actually is. And if you don't know anything about martial arts, Chinese wushu is the way you say martial art in Chinese, by the way. But wushu is more akin to performance art ballet than it is to real fighting skill. Nobody in China who's doing wushu is doing wushu to fight. They're doing it as a performance art and as a physical activity to stay in shape.
It's the original XMA.
Yeah. I mean, it comes from Chinese martial arts skills, but that's not why they train in it, and that's not why they're doing it nowadays. They're all doing it for exercise and for performance art. They're doing it for competitions and for performing. So, yeah.
So I think there's another stereotype that's exactly the opposite of that one. That from all martial arts are the same to there's only one that works, or
sure,
or maybe none of them work, right?
Yeah.
Well, that stuff doesn't work, right?
That stuff doesn't work.
Krav Maga is the only one that really works, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah, because I think I've run into that a lot. Well, I know this guy. You're in martial arts. I know this other guy who does, whatever. Insert your martial art here. And is that one better than the one you do?
Yeah.
Or
My kung fu is greater than your kung fu.
right. There's 100 different iterations of this particular stereotype, but it all comes back to one truth, and which one has the right one. It's almost like religion, right?
Ew.
Who's right? The
Yeah.
Jewish people, the Christians, or the Muslims? It's like,
Right.
well, I don't know. Maybe they're all right. Maybe they're all
Maybe
wrong.
they're all right.
But
You know what I say to that one? I had a bumper sticker back in the day that I truly believe, which is God's too big to fit inside of one religion.
Yeah.
And I love that basic mentality, and it's fairly true in the martial arts as well, which is to say that there's the truth can't be encapsulated in one martial art because human beings are flawed and imperfect. So your ability to do something, regardless of what it is, all comes down to the fact that you're just a schlub who can only handle doing so much. If there was a perfect martial art, it would be the only one that was taught.
Yes, just by natural selection.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
literally by natural selection, it would be the only one left because
they would have killed
before
everybody.
before the days of guns and warplanes, this is how people fought.
Yeah.
Right. And only the strong would have survived. Right.
Yeah.
I think it's back to that same thing we talked about before with the mirror. Like all these martial arts are just looking at the same image and interpreting it in a different way, right?
Yep.
So there may be one that agrees with your interpretation of the image better than another one.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that before too, right? Maybe wushu looks like the best one to you because that's what you want to do. You want to go out there and do all the, flashy kata type stuff, and that's great, right? But that's not for me. That doesn't work for me because I'm in this for self-defense, right? And not that some of those techniques and concepts are similar, but the way you learn them and the way you learn to apply them won't work for me, for my purpose, right?
Yeah.
And the opposite's true for someone else. And Krav Maga is great for certain things. Like I think Krav Maga was probably the go-to martial art before ground grappling jiu-jitsu got so big.
I'd say the other way around. Actually, I think that Brazilian jiu-jitsu and ground fighting took hold before Krav Maga, and now people look at Krav as like the big, is gonna. Well, okay, so there's a difference because everybody will tell you ground fighting wins, ground grappling works. Everybody will tell you that, but they'll also tell you that Krav Maga is how you're gonna kill somebody. And I don't know that that's not a true statement, to be completely honest with you. I don't know that that's not a true statement. I have never trained in Krav myself. I do know Krav's basic history and the purpose behind the art, which is why I'm making that statement that I did, which is I'm not so sure that that's not a true statement.
Sure, it's a battlefield martial art.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. But that having been said, just because a school teaches Krav Maga, doesn't mean they're teaching it the same way that Israeli Mossad agents learn it, right? If you're learning Krav Maga in the outlet mall, maybe you're not learning Krav the way it's taught in Israel. Maybe you are.
Maybe you are, maybe you aren't, right?
Yeah.
Intensity of training question is there too.
Yeah. I really don't know.
I would say that all of the martial arts work for whatever their intended purpose was. There are, and I'm giving maybe some,
or at least they did.
Maybe I shouldn't be giving as much credit as I'm giving here. I would say there are a lot of people who don't know what the original intention of the martial art that they're teaching is,
Right.
and they're telling it to you wrong, right?
Right. Well,
Uh,
yeah, a good example that would be judo. You
okay,
know,
go down that road. Yeah.
yeah, judo is a great example because there was a point in time where judo was a common practice to teach to as a self-defense art, like to police and things like that. I had a boss at one point in time who actually was at one point in time he was a cop in the United Kingdom. Over in Great Britain, at some point in his life, he had actually served as a police officer over in the UK, and he was trained in judo in that period of time. Now, that sounds all nice and fine and dandy because what we're talking about is we're talking 1960s, late 60s, early 70s is what we're talking about. Um, the only problem with that is judo's a sport, and it was created as a sport. Um, so it's not that there aren't valid self-defense techniques in judo. There absolutely are. There's many things that they do that we do in hapkido or are done in jujitsu or aikido or so on and so forth. But the mentality of judo is it's a sport. So they teach you to do things in a sport methodology. So there's fundamental flaws to the execution there that could get you killed in the real world.
Yeah, absolutely. And are there concepts there that work? Absolutely, there are. Just like you just said, right? There are techniques that they have in judo that we have in our system and other people have in their system because they work, right? They're
Yeah.
throws, and they will definitely put someone on the ground if you do it right. Right?
Yeah.
The context of how you apply them, yeah, could be sporterized or self-defense oriented, and there's a big difference between those two things.
Yeah, totally.
And I think some people do it. Some of the reasons that happens is a little historical, right? I mean, like over time, just things drift, right? Knowledge drifts and things change, and especially in a world where a lot of martial arts is commercial, which it is in the U.S. It's a bit like your average workout studio. 20 years ago, step aerobics was the big thing, right?
Jazzercise or
Jazzercise, all that stuff. And what was the next thing was like, so someone was doing step aerobics, right? And all of a sudden the next popular thing is jazzercise. And like, oh yeah, we do that here. And what changed was they put some jazzy sounding music on in the background, did the same workout routine, right? That has definitely happened with the martial arts. Oh yeah, this is a self-defense martial art.
Yeah.
Right.
Nowadays, everybody does CrossFit.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you have $3,000 and can sign your own name, you too can be a CrossFit instructor.
Yep.
So definitely can find examples of that in the martial arts, which is sad but true.
Yep. Yeah, totally. Yeah, that is very true as well. Actually, to go with that statement that you just made there, and this is a real thing. There's a school opening up in Omaha. I'm not going to name the school. But there is a school that is opening up in Omaha in the near future. Is going to have their grand opening. The person who owns the school has no martial arts training at all. He's not going to teach. He's just the owner. He bought into a martial arts franchise for some god awful reason. I don't know why. But he bought into one of these martial arts chains that is, national or international chain franchise. So he bought a martial arts franchise and then is looking to hire talent. Well, the problem is this is a person who doesn't know what talent is in the martial arts.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow. Okay. Good luck to him.
I don't even have a problem with the fact that they're not going to teach and they're just going to be the owner. That's fine. You want to invest your money into something as a business model. I wouldn't put my money in martial arts if I had $300,000 or $400,000 to to light on fire and throw away, I sure as hell wouldn't open up a dojo with that money. I can think of better ways to make my money, make me more money than that. I own a dojo because I love the martial arts and I'm passionate about it, not because I think it's a money-making scheme.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, you know,
The old
how do
saying
you?
is true, right? A good way to make a small fortune in the martial arts is to start with a large fortune.
Yep, right. If you want to make $1 million in the martial arts, start with 2 million.
Right.
Yeah, you know. But how does somebody who doesn't have talent and experience in martial arts, how do they judge that somebody has the talent and experience that they want as the person who's going to run their business? Holy moly.
Yeah,
What I mean?
That's an interesting one, man.
Yeah. So I mean that is
It's better than the guy who learned everything he knows from martial arts in the movies and then decided to buy into the franchise and teach. But
yeah.
it's still going to be a tough road. Hey, I got another one for you before we run out of time here. But
Yeah.
When was the last time you talked to Steven Seagal?
Ooh. What do you mean by that? I'm not sure what you mean by that.
How about Jackie Chan? When you got him on your speed dial, right? Everybody in the martial arts knows everybody else.
Oh yeah, sure, right.
That's now I'm throwing down big names, but I think it happens on a much more. That's another one I get a lot. Like, oh, you're into the martial arts? Yeah. My buddy from high school. Do you know him? It's like, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know him. It's like,
right?
You went to high school in New York State, dude. We live in Indiana. Like, how am I going to know that guy, right? But
the funny thing is, I can tell you in Omaha, I know almost every instructor.
but
that's in Omaha.
I know. It's that's one of those stereotypes. That's how it perpetuates itself, right? Is because it is a relatively small community.
It's very niche.
Right?
Yeah. And if you compete, then there's a really high likelihood that you're going to know a lot of other martial arts instructors in schools. If you don't compete, that changes the dynamic by a lot.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I think it's just funny, what people assume. And this is also a condition of human psychology, right? Because
associative thinking.
Your brain likes to lump things into categories because it's easy for it to process categories,
right?
Versus tons of individual events, right? So,
right. That's one of the reasons why we see things the way that we do in the world and as categories.
Right. Yeah, it helps us survive, right? We're pack animals, tribal creatures, and that's how our brain still works. But like. People do it all the time. Like, oh, you're from Canada. I knew this other guy from Canada. Do you know him?
Right.
Well, there's like,
thing.
70 million people in Canada. I don't even know how many. It's a lot, right? And
right.
The chances are they don't know each other, right? But when you ask that question, it's just the answer is yes, just often enough to perpetuate the thinking, right?
Yeah. Well, anytime somebody mentions to me Chicago, right? Somebody says Chicago to me. I think you and Sarah, you guys don't actually even live in Chicago. But at this point in time, as an associative type of thinking, you guys live very close to the Chicago area, and Chicago from a relative position is the thing I can think of that's most iconic in relationship to where you are.
It's even worse going the other way because people ask me, oh, you lived in Omaha for a long time. My cousin lives there.
Yeah.
It's like, and they know Omaha is a smaller place. So the expectation is even higher that I know who that person is.
Right.
Even though there's like, I don't know what there is right now, 1 million people in Omaha or something.
500,000 Omaha proper. And then, you throw in the suburbs, then it becomes closer to like, 650,000, something like that. Yeah. Right. Which sounds like a lot. And it sounds like a little at the exact same time,
Right.
I don't know. It's not like, being in China and the same square mileage has 3 million people.
Right. That's kind of like Chicago. So one last one. Do martial arts help or hurt? Or sorry, do stereotypes help or hurt the martial arts industry?
Yes and no. Both. It depends on the stereotype. It really depends on the stereotype. If somebody walks into a school and what they are looking for is they're looking for the good stereotypes, then I'd say it helps. Um, if they are looking to strike first, strike hard, no mercy, um, that's a perpetual stereotype I would like to see die off. Oh, oh, let me not spoil Cobra Kai, but here's something that I really have not enjoyed about this show. I'm not going to say when it is in the show. We got 3 seasons of the show, but there have been a couple of instances now in in Cobra Kai. There's been a couple of instances in Cobra Kai now where you've had mass karate brawl with teenagers.
I like that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where you have mass combat of like 5-on-5 or 8-on-8 teenage karate brawl gangs. It's like the Jets and the Sharks all went and learned karate. And I really dislike this.
Yeah.
I was talking about this with one of our mentors the other night. And the fact that it makes me a little sick in my stomach in the show because of the fact that I know some people are going to look at that and they're going to, on an unconscious level, they're going to associate that with me. I don't like that. I really don't like that because I don't want them to feel like I teach kids to be that way or that I'm indirectly making kids be that way or anything like that. Because the fact of the matter is, if you watch Cobra Kai, first off, in comparison to 85% of the martial arts instructors I've known in my entire career, which is 30 plus years now, in comparison to that length of time, the martial arts instructors that are demonstrated in that show, and I'm talking about Kreese, I'm talking about Johnny Lawrence, and I'm talking about Daniel LaRusso. All 3 of them. They suck. They're terrible teachers. They're very, very, very bad teachers. But I also think that the show is making a point of that. I think that that's part and parcel of the journey that they're on. I think that if Ralph Macchio and Billy Zabka were here, they'd be like, oh, yeah, they're really bad at what they do, but they're getting better. They'd be like, we're getting better.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the journey of the characters, which makes them kind of fun. But to compare them to the people that I consider to be my peers, they suck. They're terrible teachers. They're really bad at their job. So I don't want anybody to associate me or what I do with what those guys are doing, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can go both ways, for sure. There are a lot of people who identify with something they see in a movie, good or bad, or whether it's strength or philosophy or whatever, and they go to a martial arts school looking for that, and so it's good in that I think it drives people in. Because getting people started is the hardest part, right? Now, it can also be bad because what they're expecting may not match the reality of what they're going to get.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so again, as an instructor or a school owner, understanding how to bridge that gap is important, right?
Yeah.
And not every school is for every student.
But,
no. That said, if you can see what people are seeking and in an honest way, build that bridge between what you're teaching and what they're seeking, then you'll have a student, right?
I've got one more before we get out of here. And I know we're getting really long on this one, but I'm going to make our producer snicker and smile because we've avoided a particular area of martial arts pop culture, and that's video games. And I'm going to touch on what you just said made me think of this because I have an icon that I will throw out there as this is something I keep in the back of my head that actually drives my training to a certain degree, and it's Ryu from Street Fighter.
Okay. Yeah.
Because and you know, I look at Ryu as I may never like leap 20 feet into the air with an uppercut, and I may never spin through the air throwing crescent kicks, you know, and levitating. But I love the icon that Ryu represents, which is the guy who is in it for the skill. He's okay with winning. He's okay with losing. He doesn't need to celebrate his victories. He wants a fight. He wants a challenge. And if you beat him, he'll be like, cool, awesome. I'm gonna work harder and I'm gonna come back and find you again in like 6 months. Let's do it again. You know? And if he wins, he's not going to rub it in your face. He's going to be like, you did a really good job. I liked what you did there. Come back and see me again. And so I really like that character and for what he represents, which is just somebody who really is trying to be the best that he can be for the sake of being the best that he can be. And so I really dig on that character specifically for that reason. And I try to look at my own training from that same perspective. I don't gotta be the best. I'm trying to be the best I can be, and I lose sometimes and I win sometimes, and I'm very much down to throw down with somebody and lose if I learn something from it. And if I happen to win, then awesome, cool, get better, let's do it again. And I really like that imagery. So that's a stereotype that I look at, and I'm like, you know, that's really cool.
Yeah, very interesting. We might be getting ready for an episode on martial arts movies and media and how to you know what type of inspiration that provides.
Oh yeah, that'd be good.
But not next week. Next week
No.
we have a different topic. And now we record this. You know, we record these several weeks ahead of time. So, but right now we're in kind of unprecedented times here in the world in general, but particularly in the United States. There's been just an increasing amount of unrest and activity, and you know, more today with more to come. Today being the day that we're recording this, not necessarily the day that you're listening to it. So we want to talk about martial arts in the times of social unrest in the next episode, and how what we do, what we train for, how we're using it in our own way during these times.
Yeah. Should be good. Should be a lot of fun. Pay attention because, you know, we want to talk about how real self-defense has an impact in a society where there's a lot of political unrest and a lot of civil unrest.
Yes. So anyway, folks, stay safe out there. Thanks for listening. As always, please like, comment, subscribe, share everything you can to get us out there.
Smoke signal.
We just want as many folks as we can to have the chance to listen to us, and you know, the algorithms that help that happen are kind of based on you doing those things for us. So we appreciate if you can do that. Hit us up with comments, questions, ideas for future shows. We definitely want to hear them. And with that, I think we're going to sign off. So everybody have a good night.
Yeah, thanks.